white privilege album. I ain't say it twice, the white privilege album. Author is AJ Rice. Man, I'm off the hook, cause the novel is an album and the album is a book. This is the white privilege album. I ain't say it twice, the white privilege album. Author is AJ Rice.
Well, good morning and welcome to a long overdue episode of Investigate Everything. This is Brian O'Shea, your host. This is episode 24/11/18. So if you want to know my coding, that is just the date in military style. Really excited today to have my friend, a very great guest, my wife's publicist of many, many people. It's very impressive. Joining us today, that's AJ Rice. He's going to talk about his new book, White Privilege Album, which I just finished for a second time this morning. You're really going to enjoy this a lot. And let me talk about the book just a little bit. I think a lot of people would see the title of the book and go, oh no, I can't read that. That's politically incorrect. The book is really about, well, in my opinion, and AJ might disagree, but what I saw in a lot of the things that AJ highlights in the book is this divisive, redone over and over type of Marxist, Maoist type of divisiveness that we've seen in every type of communist attempt to overthrow Western democracies or even China itself, with the divisiveness, in our case, using race. Now, I did have a cold open ready to go. It's a little gummed up, so I'm just going to talk you through it. I recently did an interview with Xi Van Fleet. She was a dissident from China who spoke at the Loudoun County School Board. We were talking about this divisiveness back in the time of Mao. And as Xi Van Fleet put it, Mao had to divide because there's so many people, you got to divide and conquer. In her own words, she said, because we all look the same, they couldn't use race, so they used class. And they started with landowners, the Maoists. They started with landowners and entrepreneurs, nationalists, as they called them, or rightists, they actually called them back then. And they created classes. There was red class, there was black class. Black class was bad. And so that's how they divided up the population. Now, not enough people owned land. So then it got into how you think. How you think. If you had the wrong thoughts, if you had wrong think, then you were black class. And it was hereditary. It got into your DNA. It wasn't just that you were black class, but your children were black class, your grandchildren were black class, et cetera, et cetera. Now, we've been seeing the same type of thing happen in our country for more beyond 2020. We've seen the weaponization of race, mainly from what I can tell by white academics, to divide this population. We saw it all through the Kamala campaign. Then it went into other things, such as gender, sexuality, sexualism, you name it, trans, not trans. Are you a single white male? You name it. Just everything they could do, the people that seek to really overthrow our values in our country, everything they could do to divide this population. And then what was really, really riveting in the last election was, prior to the election, everyone's all about, as they call them, Latinos and everything like that. And then suddenly, when it seemed that Latino voters had swung really much in favor of Trump, suddenly people on MSNBC and all the usual suspects started calling Latinos racist and misogynist. Now, everyone ignores the fact that the economy is in shambles, that there seemed to be an attempt to totally destroy this country, as well as one whole political party. They tried to assassinate Donald Trump. All these things came into play, but also eggs are like $9 a dozen, depending where you're shopping. Crime is out of control. The dollar is not worth what it used to be. The BRICS are moving towards their own consolidation of power against the U.S. China continues to encircle the U.S. to this day. They just set up another port in Peru. They ignored all that. It must be race and misogyny that Kamala Harris, who has trouble forming sentences, didn't get in. Okay, so I could go on all day. You guys all know this. We've all been living through it together. My audience especially, thank you and welcome back. I see a lot of familiar faces in the chat. So I'm going to stop talking, because I got another Irishman on. He's probably going to talk more than me, and that's hard to do. But you're going to enjoy this, and I'm going to bring to the stage AJ Rice to talk about the White Privilege album, and hopefully he tells me about the White Privilege album song as well. I just caught that on the back cover. AJ, welcome.
Brother, great to be here. This the subtitle of this episode is called Two Irish Guys Get Drunk Before Noon. Isn't that what it's called? That's the subtitle of today's show.
Before 10.
It's called Investigate Every Whiskey on the Shelf. That's what it's called.
Investigate
when no
bourbon.
one's looking. Exactly.
Well, welcome, man. It's good to see you. It's been
Great
a while.
to be
I haven't
here.
seen you since CPAC.
Great to be here. Absolutely. I want to do a big shout out because the subtitle of the book is Bringing Racial Harmony to Very Fine People on Both Sides. And I got to tell you, I know there's a lot of very fine people in this audience. Just helped deliver a major victory here. Republican Party controlling everything. You know, Brian, they wanted a great reset. Well, they got one. They got one. You got one, baby. And the Supreme Court, I think the clock's ticking on old Clarence Thomas and Alito. I think they're going to walk off into the sunset in June.
Oh, God, I'm going to miss Clarence Thomas. That's for sure.
We'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens. So let me throw the book up here for you. But I wanted to ask, I have a few questions. First of all, what inspired you to write this book?
Well, you're spot on. And shout out to G. Van Fleet. She's our client. So, you know, there's really no escaping Publius PR anymore. You can't really escape. It's like people say all roads lead to Rome. No, all roads lead to Publius PR. Okay?
And Publius PR is your PR firm.
Correct. I'm the Kevin Bacon. I'm the Kevin Bacon of the MAGA Maha movement. All right. There's no escape, which is fitting because Kevin Bacon's from Philadelphia as well. So yeah. It's not even 6 degrees, 5 degrees, 4 degrees. It's usually 1 or 2 degrees, and you got AJ Rice. So she is absolutely right. Part of what DEI and ESG and a lot of the race hustle is about is controlling the language in order to control the behavior so that, you know, being an American citizen is like this the Chinese social credit system kind of acts like, you know, we get one of these phones, like Brian's texted me, and I got to do an iOS update, right? I got to go through here. Oh, Naomi's calling. All right, well, I got to, you know, I accept the iOS update, right? The user agreement. Because I got to talk to Naomi, I got to talk to Brian, whatever the hell it is. And boom, you say yes, you move on. ESG, environmental social governance, DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, and wokeism in general, which is just, you know, a hip term for cultural Marxism. They want these things to act as a user agreement to be an American citizen. And, you know, my first book was called The Woking Dead, which was fun. It was more of a scatter shot of a lot of different types of wokeism. And, you know, wokeism is kind of like it's like Baskin and Robbins. There's like 31 flavors of wokeism. But with the White Privilege album, I wanted to, because I'm a Philly guy and because a lot of white people are afraid to talk about race, and I'm not. You know, I grew up in Philadelphia playgrounds, Philadelphia sports teams, throwing snowballs at Santa, booing Santa, putting Duracell batteries into snowballs that I threw at Santa. So I'm not afraid of this. You know, I took off my Allen Iverson jersey before I came on today. So I think that there's a lot of sort of fancy prepped white people that, you know, they're afraid to call out some of the race hustle, some of the race hoaxes. So I wanted to drill down on that in this book in particular, which is why, you know, I want to apologize to the Beatles for the title, not to Yoko, though. To hell with Yoko. We're not apologizing to Yoko. But the subtitle is Bringing Racial Harmony to Very Fine People on Both Sides. The Very Fine People hoax, and that's what it was, and there are others, was the sort of foundational lie that we've all, I mean, I can't believe, you know, when I was coming up with this book, I had no idea that the Very Fine People were going to make an appearance at the Biden debate with Trump, at the Kamala debate with Trump.
Explain the very fine people to the audience. Okay.
So almost 10 years ago now, Trump, we had a riot in Charlottesville. This was the original, you know, insurrection. There's a riot in Charlottesville because you've got 4 different groups some for, some against. There was a statue of Robert E. Lee that, and his horse, Traveler. It's in the middle of downtown Charlottesville. And there was this protest and this vote at the University of Virginia, which is located in Charlottesville, to remove this thing or keep it or move it to the Civil War Museum of Virginia. Or, look, I'm a union guy, so if the Civil War was tomorrow, I'm from Philly, I'll be wearing a Navy uniform. But, and I'm not against the town voting to remove things. If the town votes, if your elected officials vote to move things, fine. They removed the statue of Stonewall Jackson from VMI's campus. They moved it to the Civil War Museum in Virginia. Stonewall Jackson was actually the head of VMI at one point, which is insane in and of itself. But so even before George Floyd and the craziness there, Charlottesville was the original sort of race hoax, because Trump goes out in front of the media and he's debating with the media. And he's debating about who's racist, who has to go, who doesn't have to go. And if you look at the transcript of it, he basically gets into this tete-a-tete with a couple of these dummies at the tower, because he was in New York at Trump Tower. And he says, look, I condemn the white supremacists. If you read it, he says, I condemn them. And he's going back and forth with someone off screen. And he basically says, look, there were good people. There were very fine people on both sides of this debate. And there were. The Historical Society of Virginia was there. They were there to protest the taking down of the statue. Meanwhile, there were white nationalists that showed up. And Black Lives Matter was given a permit by the dopey mayor. So they're going at each other. Two radical groups, you should throw them both in the Rappahannock River, the James River, and they're going at each other. And what was lost in all of this was there were groups of people that were trying to get it moved to a museum. There were a group of citizens that, and Historical Society, some of them college professors at the University of Virginia, that wanted it kept, right? But it eventually got moved, and I think it got melted down. But this moment, because this girl got run over by a wacko, there was a girl that got run down with a car. This turned into the first sort of Trumpian, he's Hitler, he's the Klan moment. And they took his words out of context. Now, since that time, the Very Fine People hoax has been debunked by Bill Maher, Michael Rappaport, CBS News, Major Garrett at CBS News, and this Soros-funded fact-check organization that I'm sure hates this show called Snopes. They even said that is not what he meant. So now, and even up until recently, these wackos on MSNBC and some of these other characters are still saying, this man that was just elected with the popular vote, he said that the white supremacists were very fine people. Biden says that's the reason he ran in 2020. So as you can see, by the multi-ethnic working class coalition that Trump just delivered an election blowout with, people aren't buying it. They're not buying it. They didn't buy the Very Fine People hoax. They don't buy the losers and suckers hoax. They don't believe that Trump is going to sign a national abortion ban. Obviously, that's what Kamala ran on, Hitler and abortion, right? They don't believe in the Trump's against IVF or the Project 2025 lie. They have all these lies. These are the big ones, and there's others. And look, other sort of lesser-known figures got caught up in some of this. The Covington Catholic kids with the Indian and with the drum in the face. Kyle Rittenhouse. I mean, you could go down. The last 4 years has been filled with these things. But for me, I wanted to obviously troll the left, not just with the title, but the subtitle, and poke a little fun, because I was raised on Limbaugh, who used to say that his job was to use irreverent humor or absurdity to illustrate truth. And, if you really want to look at what just happened in this election, if there was one man who could bring racial harmony to the Very Fine People of the United States, where you've got Jews in Pennsylvania teaming up with Dearborn, Michigan, voting for the same person, and you've got blacks in Atlanta and blacks in Detroit, Phoenix, Las Vegas, Latin Americans, all voting for Hitler, it turns out wokeism, okay, and DEI and ESG and all this other nonsense, the trans mafia, all of them, that people aren't buying it. That you are absolutely correct with what you said earlier, that it's really the humanities departments of America, the people in the whitest neighborhoods in America with the Black Lives Matter flag flapping off their house, right? With the multicolored sign, in this house, we vaccinate ourselves 50 times. We love all midgets, whatever the hell it is,
man.
right? Hug a Muslim. I heart Hamas, whatever it is, those people are the ones with their Pelotons and their Audis that are the ones buying into this, right? So I'm making fun of them in the book, and I think I do a pretty adequate job of that.
Well deserved. I notice you have a lot of energy.
Well,
I warned you
I'm a
about
rocket
this.
ship. I'm a rocket ship from Northeast Philadelphia. What do you want?
You are a rocket ship. When I first met him, I was like, man, this guy is a genius, but wow, he's got energy like I have energy. And it must be an Irish thing, and I'm guessing you're Gen X as well, aren't you?
The old Irish energy.
Well, look, here's where I get my energy and getting even more every day, the Wellness Company. So this is my forced segue into some, not propaganda, but product placement. As you can see, I use these. I don't know if you've seen these, AJ. These are the Bison trifecta organ capsules. So this is like nature's multivitamin. This is one of the many products at the Wellness Company. Go to the Wellness Company today. Get 10% off when you use the code DailyClout. And you could see the DailyCloutHealth.com. Use code DailyClout at checkout. Get 10% off. I know the CEO. I know most of the people there. Harvey Risch is there. Peter McCullough. It's the best company that I can use. And I'm lucky we got their care kits and everything like that. And I actually used the first aid kit on my dog because he somehow cut himself. And one thing I really like is they have this this one emergency kit, and we live up in the woods, and my lovely wife seems to think she's immune to things like ticks and mosquitoes, so she goes frolicking out in the woods of New York that inspired the legend of Sleepy Hollow in a sundress barefoot, and then she wonders why she has like 5 ticks on her. And what's really nice about that is we couldn't get any doxycycline quick enough because with the institutionalized pharmaceuticals, they wanted her to like try a vaccine in the top of her head or something. We're like, no, I don't think so. Opened up my little Wellness Company kit, and we had like 50 pills of doxycycline, take care of any potential, what do you call it? The Lyme disease. Yeah. So that's the Wellness Company. Let's get back to it, AJ. I'll send you some of those buffalo pills if you want
There
to.
is nothing wrong with an obscene profit break. You have to do it. You absolutely have to do it.
That's how I make my living. But
that's right, brother.
And I got to say though, I've gotten healthier being a podcaster because people will send me products, and I'm like, I try them all, and even my hair has gotten thicker. I'm not even kidding.
Right.
It's wonderful. A couple questions, and I'll let you get right back into that flow. What I really liked about the book a lot was you did point out the things, and I was kicking myself. I was like, he points out all those things. I've always wanted to make this list of all these different what's racist, what's not racist. You mentioned how, and in a very sarcastic tone, obviously, but you talk about math is racist and all these things that were pushed upon us. But what really caught my attention was the section on Ebonics. Now, I don't know if anyone in the audience is too young to remember, but there was an attempt to make Ebonics, which was basically slang that was attributed to Black Americans, to make that an official language. And you went into a history of it that I found I didn't even know. Like, it's fascinating. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure.
And the reason why I'm having you talk about this is, if you're a reader, if you like history, in addition to current geopolitics, this is the book for you. I'm always torn, like, do I read history today, current events? This has got it all. Very key issues. So let's talk about Ebonics.
No, absolutely. You got a little history, a little humor, a little horror. You got it all in there. So as far as so we got to give a big shout out to Tom Sowell on that section, because he's the one that sort of outlined this, and I was quoting him, quite a bit in that section. So he was making the case that, and look, the audience can tell by listening to me, I don't speak the Queen's English. All right, I'd say WUDDER. That's how you spell water, right? I'm from Philadelphia. We say water. We don't say water, right? So and look, dialects are fun. Boston's got their own. New York's got their own. The Midwest, Fargo, from Fargo to South Boston, right? So that's what makes us a unique people. Now, I will say that what Sowell is talking about, as it relates to Ebonics, is that the sort of Cockney, broken, back alley English of Wessex and different suburbs of London made their way over across the Atlantic when the country was being settled. Some of the poor people over there went to poor areas here, the South, pre-Civil War, and that their version of English is what the slaves were listening to. And if you follow the bouncing ball all the way through to today, the sort of gangster rap, slang, Ebonics that you hear, and even in the last 30 years, the way rappers even talk has gotten even more sometimes unintelligible. And the Southern rappers, which they call crunk, and there's a bunch of other terms for it, wow. Some of their stuff is like what they call mumble rap, right? So, I mean,
it's actually called mumble. It's actually called mumble rap.
Yeah. It's like, you get, like, if you listen to a guy like Future, it's like, you don't even know, like, what? There's not even words. It's just like a beat, and like maybe you can hear something. I mean, we could play some of it. Your audience would die. And I listen to some of it because some of it's got, especially when you're working out, it can get you going, right? So if you want to turn off Rammstein and Danzig, you can put on 2 Chainz and Future. But
I love those. Did you know I love those 2 bands?
Oh, do you? Okay. Well, I
love Rammstein and Danzig.
I was putting 2 things together that were similar. These 2 are similar to those 2, and they're complete opposites of each other.
Totally.
But I will say that although, some of that Rammstein stuff, I mean, it's a German, but I mean, sometimes even like metal, heavy metal, some of that is unintelligible too.
Well, it's German. I don't speak German. Sure. I just like the beat.
Sure. Right. So you don't speak Atlanta either, and you just like the beat. So, but yeah. So what Sowell's saying is that Ebonics, as it was known in the social science department 30 years ago, and now is sort of freely used, could be, you could trace its origins to poor whites in England. And what's funny is this brings us to like a larger discussion about goofy white fancy liberals pandering, especially Democrats. Like with me, like if you talk to me in person or you watch me now, I've met George W. Bush, I've met Donald Trump, I've met Joe Biden, I've talked to Jimmy Carter on the phone, I've talked to George H.W. Bush on the phone, and I'll just say, I'm going to talk like this no matter what. Right?
And you do. I've seen you in action.
Right. So I'm not going to like slip into some cadence that you're not getting right now. The only thing that might happen
wasn't there a recent candidate that had a tendency to do
that's what I'm going to get into here. No, that's what I'm going to get into here. It's funny because even, look, our first black president was a chubby white guy from Arkansas. But our second black president, even he has a switch that he drops into. He's a half white guy from Hawaii, Kansas, you pick. His father's from Kenya, his mother's from Kansas. And it's funny because Kamala was doing a little bit of this. Like when she go talk to the union guys in Detroit, she sounds like she works at H&R Block. Right? And then she goes and talks. She goes and talks to the brothers, right? She goes to Philadelphia or somewhere else, Pittsburgh, and all of a sudden she sounds like Sister Soldier. She sounds like Missy Elliott or something. It sounds crazy. So, but what's funny was this. I was watching Barack Obama before the election. He goes to Pittsburgh. And look, this is the type of stuff I make fun of in the book, just for the audience's, just so you know. Now, this didn't make it into the book because this just happened. Obama goes to Pittsburgh. He's got this room full of black dudes, bunch of Pittsburgh Steelers fans. And, they're probably not real happy with him because, he didn't really do much for black America. He had 8 years. He couldn't even get him a black Supreme Court justice. He got him 2 childless, unmarried, childless, miserable women named Kagan and Sotomayor. And then paging J.D. Vance, by the way. Paging J.D. Vance on that. They probably have cats. They're listening to Taylor. They're listening to Taylor Swift. So then he had a third pick, right? Because Scalia dies. What does he do? He picks the current attorney general, who never got confirmed, thank God, Merrick Garland. It's just another dorky white guy. So Obama didn't do much except fundraise for his library, and then go on vacation, to Whitey McWhiterson places like
Martha's Vineyard,
Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard and these places. So he's standing there and he's so demeaning. It's terrible. He goes, listen. All of a sudden, the switch comes on. He goes, listen, brothers. He goes, I hear some of the brothers in the room are having a hard time with Kamala.
Yeah.
And he goes, you need to vote for her because she's from the neighborhood. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute. What neighborhood is she from? I know her mother went to, was going to McGill University. She was in a fancy Canadian neighborhood. She's Indian. She's Jamaican. What Marin County neighborhood? What neighborhood is she from? Now, she keeps telling us she's from a middle-class family. Obama's telling us she's from the neighborhood. She also, when she got into that fight with Biden in that debate 5 years ago, she was in a forced busing. She's claiming she was in a forced busing situation. So I don't know how you can be from the neighborhood, from fancy McGill University, from forced busing situation, and you were born in a middle-class family. I don't know how you could be all these things. There is a term in hip-hop, there is a term in rap music for this. It's called a studio gangster, okay? Where you're not really you're not really from the streets. You're just an auto-tuned hack.
What was that movie? It was like CB4, was it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, great movie.
Yeah, Chris Rock
highly recommend it.
That's right. So Obama's standing there, and he says, listen, brothers, she's from the neighborhood, and I'm worried that some of the gentlemen in the room the brothers in the room aren't going to vote for her, because they don't like the idea of having a woman president. So basically, what he's doing there is the soft bigotry of low expectations. He's basically saying, you need to vote for her because of the melanin in her skin. Okay? No. And if you don't, you're a misogynist, you're sexist, whatever the hell it is. So that's the maneuver. So he flipped on the switch. He flipped on the Barack Ebonic switch. We've seen Hillary do it. She goes into a black church and does it.
Oh,
Al Gore,
no, she's Caribbean, she's Latina.
Yeah, she's everything.
Well, and look, I would say a lot of like what I always liked about Donald Trump is he never did the thing where he until he wore the garbage vest, and that was a good point he made.
Right. And a McDonald's outfit. That's right.
But for the most part, he's always had the suit, the wingtips. He doesn't put on the farmer hat and roll up the sleeves like every politician does.
Well, he'll put on the hard hat because he. I mean, look, this is a blue collar billionaire. This is an I-beam guy. This is a hard hat guy, right? So that's he's comfortable with coal miners,
sure,
and steel workers and lumberjacks and the people at McDonald's. He's comfortable with that. That's look, and this gets into it. Is that, Barack Obama got elected twice. That's nice. And look, you have thousands of counties that voted for Obama twice and voted for Trump 3 times. But usually the American people are looking for authenticity, right? And it's in the blind spot where you're not looking for meritocracy and authenticity, where wokeism metastasizes, where you say to yourself, I don't care if they're the best. I want them because they go home they sleep in bed with these people, or they got this skin color, or this.
Yeah.
Well,
let me jump in, because I wanna ask you this before I forget it. But when you're talking about this, what I'm seeing is, it seems like there's a lot of people with too much time on their hands that make the most problems. And so when I met Naomi, she was rolling with that whole elite Manhattan crowd. Now, let's be fair, she wasn't part of the crowd per se. She was more like a character in Bonfire of the Vanities, where she's your token feminist author. And they actually have the A list. I'm sure you know that.
Sure.
Got to get the author. Got to get the the poet with AIDS. And
right. It's a sushi menu of woke identities.
Exactly. So, but one thing that they reminded me, a lot of the activist types, and Naomi was never the activist type like that, but a lot of the people I'd meet, they were almost like those predators in that Matthew McConaughey movie that's in the future, where the only thing they could grow is okra. And they capture a drone because it has a solar cell, and it's just been spinning up there in the orbit forever, looking for its next target. And I just feel like in the last 4 years, we've really seen like the laptop class woke, the Manhattanites, the San Francisco types. It's like they're looking for anything they can find. And a lot of it does come out of dissertations, like trying to pick
100%.
that dissertation that no one's done yet. Like, I think caterpillars are disenfranchised. I'm going to write a paper on that, which hopefully someone will publish as a book. Have you seen that as well?
I mean, these are, I call them in The Walking Dead, my first book. These are faculty lounge fascistas. These humanities, these humanities departments are like, and look, I come from one. That's why Naomi and I get along, because like I can do the politics stuff, but then I can hit her with Lord Byron and she knows what I'm talking about, right? So, I mean, it's the humanities department. They're like madrasas. They're like madrasas at this point. And when you see, and you know what, I want to make this point on this show, because I want you to know, because you're in New York, I want you to think about this. It's an amazing thing. When October 7th happened and Black Lives Matter threw in with Hamas, and, a lot of other people, some of them surprising, were playing footsie with Hamas. Now they're playing footsie with Hezbollah. But when you look at the college campuses, even if you go back to the George Floyd incident, think about which campuses went the craziest. It's usually the whitest campuses in America for the most part. For the most part. Because I want the audience to think about this. Did you see any HBCU, any historically black college or universities, start burning themselves down after the George Floyd thing, or the Very Fine People incident, or October 7th? No. The black campuses all behaved themselves for the most part. It's the lily white Antifa spoiled brats that are majoring in underwater lesbian basket weaving that are burning their freaking UCLA down and Yale down and Columbia. It's them. It's them. They're the members of Queers for Palestine, right?
Yeah,
These black kids that escaped the worst situation known to man, they got into this school, whether it's Howard or Morehouse, whatever it is. They're like, no way am I jeopardizing getting a bachelor's or master's degree and acting like these idiots over here.
Well, and you make a good point, and it's so I put myself through college. I went to the Army and I got the GI Bill, and I went when I could while I was in the Army because it was free, which was really hard to do, especially when you've been in the field and you smell. But I did it, and then when I got out, I got my master's in Boston, and that was expensive. It was
Sure.
Per credit was a lot of money, and there was no way if a protest were to happen like BU that I was going to get involved, because I can't afford to retake that class at $1,300 a credit. Exactly. And so I think when I see the type of campuses, it's beyond just them being white. It's them being very expensive, kind of elitist colleges, who are not. They don't understand the value of how much money it costs because they're not paying for it. And I think what I saw through this whole thing, I think what a lot of people saw in this election was like, hey, man, this is about class. This is a battle against class. Black, white, Hispanic, it doesn't matter. And, a great example of this is when the Woking Dead tried to spark the whole anti-Asian thing at the start of the Biden administration. Then it turned out Asian Americans do pretty well in both academics and in business. And so, of course, they couldn't be part of the revolution, I guess, because they were just a bit too successful.
Well, yeah. And look, and you had this, and I read about in the book, this affirmative action case where Clarence Thomas cut the head off of that. And a lot of the plaintiffs, and I was with one this week, and one of them, Kenny Hsu, who wrote the book on the Harvard case, is our client. And they were basically Asian kids and some Indian kids, some Middle Eastern kids that were using these goofy rules that the left set up, but couldn't say these are just for black people. They had to say they're for, minorities or, disadvantaged groups and this and that. So they start using these stupid, rules against them in Ivy League schools, in junior Ivy schools. And the left goes crazy, right, with these racial preferences. And then what starts to happen is Asian people, they're small business owners, they own restaurants, they own dry cleaning, whatever the hell it is. They're becoming doctors. Indian people, Persian people, they're doctors, they're plastic surgeons, all kinds of things. The left's like, well, wait a minute. So, these are for minorities, but they're only for certain minorities, right? They start divvying up these people like Skittles colors. It's insane. And they're mad that they're using the stupid system that they created. So obviously the system gets tossed, and then they get really mad. And I write about this in the book. I think it was New York Magazine, comes up with this term. It's an insane term. I love it, by the way. It's called white adjacent. Okay? So Asian people aren't really minorities. They're white adjacent.
Oh, my God.
Because their income and their GPAs are higher than even white people. Indian doctors, and now, the Latin Americans had it coming. You saw it after this election. They're now white adjacent. I think New York. Oh,
are they really? I mean, have they said it?
Yes, they're white adjacent. So basically, anyone that's not from Western Europe that votes Republican is white adjacent now. They're all the Jews in Pennsylvania. I mean, well, come on in. We're all white adjacent. And I guess white adjacent means, standing next to you and me. I guess. I mean, it's just the light, like you and I are like stained glass windows, and the light passes through us, and we shoot our whiteness on the person next. This is how nuts they are. But I love it. You have to make fun of it. And obviously, this stuff is backfiring.
Big time.
Not just because, Gutfeld and myself and Crowder and the Babylon Bee and you make fun of it, but also I think if you look at the four most popular politicians in the last 12 months that weren't Democrats, whether it was DeSantis or Vivek or RFK Jr. or Trump, these are all anti-woke guys. These are all people pushing back on this. Are you shocked that they all sort of rose to the top? Are you shocked?
Well,
you shouldn't be.
They also recognize people need to make money. I mean, I think that's, in my opinion, one of the biggest things was the money. Like, if you look at so many politicians of the past, they still fared fairly well because gas prices didn't go up. But what I have found in my own life is like when I'm really, really successful and I've got everything subcontracted out and I have some time on my hands, those are the only times I really feel depression and, some strong emotions and start thinking stupid things and drinking too much Guinness and writing bad poetry. It's when I'm busy, I need to make money and things are a little tough that I just don't got time for that. Right. And I remember walking with my buddy Rondell up there in northern New York where we live in Hudson Valley. And he said the funniest thing to me. He's like, hey, man, he goes, can you believe eggs are $8.99? And I go, yeah, and they're $8.99 for both of us. He goes, I noticed that. That's so weird.
That's right. It's exactly right. I mean, the gas prices are the same, no matter what color you are. And look,
Now,
here's the thing too, and I talk about this in the Walking Dead. I wrote about this. The American people are we're dealing with 4 tyrannies at the same time: medical tyranny from Fauci and the pharmaceutical cartel. That's one. Economic tyranny from Bidenomics, inflation, right? And obviously, you got these white mayors allowing for the third world to be dumped in black people's front yards in Chicago and New York and all these places. You're redistributing the third world to people's front yards. So you've got this economic tyranny. You've got a sort of Justice Department tyranny where, Trump had 2 phony impeachments, 4 phony indictments. Now he had 2 assassination attempts, right? And then obviously the cultural tyranny, which is the Walking Dead. So if you've got those 4 tyrannies coming at you, we can all disagree on the margins about all kinds of things. Right. While you're doing all that, you're also sending Kim and Jim into the women's locker room. My daughter has got softball. Gary's pitching to her. And so you take all of this as potpourri of insanity.
Yep.
And all different types of people, regardless of skin color or religion or whatever the hell it is, they're going to push back on you. I mean, before the October 7th event, you had the 3 Abrahamic religions, Islam, Judaism, Christianity, starting to come together in Maryland, Minnesota, Massachusetts, these places to fight wokeness. And obviously October 7th messed up some of that, but it kind of came back together a little bit here with this election.
It definitely did. And, it's interesting about October 7th. So my biggest area of expertise would be the Chinese Communist Party. And October 7th was really interesting because as these pro-Hamas protesters were like attacking Muslim politicians even, we had China saying, America, I told you you're racist, and they were doing that in 2020. And they were saying, you're racist, look at George Floyd and all this. Well, meanwhile, China is tearing down mosques and actually Xi Jinpingifying mosques. Like they're making like churches and everything, the ones they don't tear down, into this weird type of, cult of personality religion. It's a officially atheist country, and a lot of the people leading these protests, these were, first of all, like you said, the white elitists like Naomi Klein, who was like at the center of the ceasefire thing. But she's a Marxist. She doesn't care about Islam. She doesn't care about Christianity. And I doubt she even cares about being Jewish. So the thing is, they're atheists.
Well,
they don't care.
Yeah. You don't hear her writing, crying, bringing out the world's smallest violin for the Uyghur Muslims that are in concentration camps, getting their organs harvested by the CCP. I mean, all this talk about the Palestinians and this and that, people that have an invented country, the Phoenicians, the Philistines. The reality is that there is, internment camps going on right now. And they don't seem to care. They care what Netanyahu's doing. They care what Netanyahu's doing. They don't care what Xi Jinping's doing.
Exactly. And they also don't care because if they start caring about those things, they lose money. I mean, as it turns out, as you know, Klein wrote a hit piece on Naomi, my Naomi, called Doppelganger, where it is really an attack on the whole health freedom movement, and basically saying, what's that? Did you read it?
Creepy. Yeah, no, I'm
She's
saying
weird, man.
Well, I was working with Naomi when we were doing one of Naomi's books when this came out. I mean, it was just like she's like a creepy stalker.
Well, it turns out when the book came out, and for those that don't know, quick plug here, get the Pfizer documents. I don't have the book in front of me, but someone gave me this wonderful mug at the party. Get the Pfizer documents. Oh, yeah, great. And, you could go to DailyClout.io to get it. Great book. It's amazing. We got a stack of them here. And if a couple people already know they could request one from me, I'll send it right over to you. But on Klein, it's interesting that, she's always been anti-capitalist in her writing. She's very rich, ironically. And then at the same time that that book came out, Doppelganger, which I think was last fall, I think right away, I'm like, yeah, obviously they're going to go after Naomi Wolf because of her things like the Pfizer papers exposing all the dangers and deadliness of these vaccines. And as it turns out, this lady's husband, Naomi Klein's husband, currently is working for the campaign to consolidate pharmaceuticals under government rule, which then the government would really profit from vaccines in Canada. So, and it brings me to my other point is as I'm reading the book, it's all of these things. Like if you're educated, you can laugh at it. But if you're not, you're going to get mad because, and I think part of the, woke strategy has been to keep the masses dumb, just like Mao did. G. Van Fleet was telling me, she's like, I was amazed at how much knowledge there was in the world once I moved to the United States because we were limited on what we could know. And when I see things like TikTok, when I see things like my own iPhone, which I have to put in another room if I want to get any work done, it's just this constant barrage of things to distract you, to keep you from reading a book and getting knowledge. And have you seen in your research of the woke and everything like that, have you seen concerted efforts or actually official programs to dumb down the masses or things along those lines?
Sure. I mean, look, in the piece in there called Math is Racist in particular, it used to just be the language arts where you have qualitative, subjective, interpretive study going on where, even in sentence structure, if you read, Henry V or you read Reservoir Dogs, the English is being used in very different ways in these two things, right? David Mamet was one of the first playwrights to start having his characters talk like people on the streets, right? So Tarantino copied that, and Elmore Leonard and many people have done a very good job of that, right? So, but, when it comes to sort of things that actually have a definition of 1 + 1 = 2, the wokeism has gotten into the sciences. It's gotten into, math. It's gotten
terrifying.
into things that, the periodic table's racist.
It's trying to get into space, as you highlighted in your book.
What's the atomic weight of cobalt? Well, whatever it is, it must be racist. This is where we're at. But you have to mock them. You have to look. Rush, Andrew Breitbart, Laura Ingraham, some of my mentors always said that, if you can hang a joke on someone, it will last way longer than if you try to make some Aristotelian argument. So look, even though Victor Davis Hanson is my client, I love him and we need him out there. I am trying to do something different with my books because I am trying to weaponize humor. And that's what the White Privilege album is I'm kidnapping their terms and then using it back against them through mockery. Because in some cases, mockery's more effective than facts. Hate to say it, It is. But if you can use absurdity to illustrate facts, to illustrate truth, you can go a long way, especially if you're worried about, millennials and Gen Z. I'm a millennial. I'm a geriatric millennial. But, the reality is that I see some of them turning. I think they get it. And as much as we scream about, social media companies being left-wing, Elon Musk buying Twitter in particular was one of the greatest digital jailbreaks in history. And I think we are reaching people with memes and reels and all kinds of things. I saw a poll last week from the Daily Mail. Couldn't even believe this. For all the talk about abortion and how, Trump's going to be coming to your house and make you have the rapist's baby, 40% of women under the age of 30 voted for Trump. That number is, that's the people looking for abortions, right? I don't, newsflash to the left. I don't know whether they know this, but we've reached a point, millennials, Gen Z, we actually know how to have sex and not get pregnant. We're not dumb. We know how to do that, which is why when I see these commercials before the election, these commercials with these women on TV lecturing, I guess, girls on, Trump. You vote for him, and if you vote for this senator, and there's going to be a nationwide abortion ban and all this stuff. It's always some crone yelling about abortion who went through menopause 30 years ago. Like, what do you know, lady? What do we could put you in a dunking booth full of sperm and you still would not get pregnant. So spare me the lectures on, some 70-year-old, some 80-year-old lecturing girls on their freedom. I think just like every other type of self-actualization, every other type of individual freedom, I think we have figured out how to not get pregnant. Now, granted, Reagan's position, George W. Bush's position, and Trump's position has always been rape, incest, health of the mother. Bill Clinton's position was, safe, rare, and legal. These are not radical statements, but they want to project their crazy radicalism on pretty much every moderate or Republican politician of the last 40 years. And I think it's starting to backfire.
Well, and I think another reason it backfires is because if you look at what, take for instance, like Marxism, okay? What you did is you took a lot of fringe groups like neo-Marxism. You take a lot of fringe groups and you fuse them all together. But it's a very, very fragile alliance. And once you get one crack, it just falls apart because it starts eating itself. If you start saying trans rights and then you stop saying lesbian rights, then you've got two opposing parties. If you start saying white adjacent, like you said earlier, people are like, hey, wait a minute, time out, wait. We were in that club. I mean, you saw it with BLM. They started fighting internally 2 months into that deal because people weren't black enough. And then white people started saying they were black because they associate as black or identify as black. And when you fuse things together on such a fragile and shallow ideology or lack thereof, it's always going to fall apart. Like, again, Mao's China is a great example. I was reading a great book, by the way, if you haven't read it, Decoder. I was reading in about the Cultural Revolution again, and what really, really undermined the whole collectivism type push that Mao was insanely pushing, he also probably had syphilis and was going crazy, was that people were starving. And so, ironically, capitalism in the underground of Mao's China actually flourished because people the towns would get together and they say, hey, you know what? Let's have two sets of books. And this booming black market of grain and everything happened. And, it's the same thing that I've seen here where people, I think a lot of polling that happened, people are like, they had two sets of books, so to speak. Right. Someone would come to their house and they'd say, hey, who are you going to vote for? And they're like, Kamala Harris. Sure. And then they'd be great. And then they'd leave. And then they'd be like, let's vote for Trump. And they were even doing this with the signs for Kamala Harris and Waltz because I don't know if you noticed where you're at, but in New York, especially upstate New York, I see the same series of 4 signs on every lawn. And the closer you got to the voting stations, the more you'd see Kamala Harris Waltz signs. Now, most of New York geographically is red. There's a lot of rural areas. And I started noticing that, and I said to Naomi, I said, you see that? It's the same 4 signs, and they get thicker as you get towards the voting stations. I talked to my friend who owns an antique shop in Great Barrington, and I said, have you seen this? He goes, yeah, here's what's happening. He said, these people come to your house. They're a bit intimidating. They kind of look like Antifa. They have the signs, and they say, hey, can we put these on your lawn? And he goes, and if you're some old person, even if you are a Democrat, maybe you don't want these, but you're not going to say no. And a lot of people cave to that. And you notice the day after the election, for some reason, all the signs are gone.
Right.
Gone.
Well, what's funny too, and I think there's some term for that. It was based on the guy that ran for the Wilson effect or Pete Wilson, was some effect where people would lie to pollsters. It was a black guy, and they really were going to vote for the white person. It's just another sort of racist bromide, but when you talk about 2 sets of books, That's really what decided this election. And I'm going to extrapolate from what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
There's two sets of media, right? There's two sets of media. Kamala Harris was offered 3 hours to fly to Austin to go on the largest podcast in the world, and she declined. Barron Trump apparently had Donald Trump going through the bros. Schultz and the Nelk boys and Theo Vaughn and Rogan and many, many others. He went to that place where there were still undecided people or people that don't normally pay attention to election years. And he found them. He found them in those places. He didn't go to the Chamber of Commerce. He didn't go to the Wall Street Journal editorial page. He went to the bros, to the manosphere, right? That's where he went. Because there's this whole group of people, two sets of books, that are not reading your books. They don't care what Mika Brzezinski thinks, or the dummies on The View, or the Stevens and the Jimmies and the Stevens and the Jimmies and the Stevens on late night. They don't watch any of that. They're doing long form podcasts all day long. So, and there's all different types. And yeah, she went to the Breakfast Club. But, they've got kind of a niche audience themselves. They certainly don't probably have a bunch of undecided people. We all kind of know where they're coming from. And Rogan said it, I guess, at the end of last week, and I saw a clip of it. He said, after the election, I can't tell you how many people, famous people I can't talk about, rock stars, hippies, very famous left-wing people that were texting me, thanking me for endorsing Trump because they couldn't. So this is who's hiding. These voters and these people, it's more than you think. They're in there.
No. Look, I'm in
these NFL players that are doing Trump's dance.
Totally. And
right?
I'm in Brooklyn right now. So our neighborhood is mainly like Caribbean, okay, and like second generation, first generation Caribbeans.
Sure.
Wonderful working class neighborhood. We love it. But there's no animosity. There's no sadness like you saw in 2020. Like there's a sigh of relief. And then my daughter, she's kind of in the cool kid club out here in Brooklyn. She hangs with all the musicians and everything. I think she's friends with Lenny Kravitz's former drummer. She's one of the cool kids. And one of her friends was telling me that like how many of them, the working class millennials, because they're cool kids, but they're still working, have been largely ignored, especially in cities, because I think the Democrats just figured, we got their vote. And this one girl, I can't say her name, but she's like, she's says the other day to a bunch of friends, she goes, this might sound crazy. She goes, I think I'm a Republican. And because she makes good money, she wants to keep making good money. She's black, she's very woke, but she's like, yeah, I mean, I just kind of like this lifestyle I'm living, and I can't do it in that other camp.
That's right.
Very telling, I think. That's
right. And look, there's a lot of millennials that might have voted for Obama that have now voted for Trump 3 times, maybe 2 times. And before I go, I just want to say one thing that involves your wife. And it involves my book and involves what happened here. And let me use a sports analogy. If Trump was George Steinbrenner or the GM of an NFL team or whatever it is, and we talk about at the beginning of this thing, we talked about the interview, we talked about a great reset that has happened. They wanted a great reset. Well, you got one. You got one. Republicans now control everything. And Elon Musk helped. J.D. Vance helped. But Publius PR, which is my day job, I represent Naomi Wolf, Tulsi Gabbard, and RFK Jr. And many other people, Vivek and Don Jr., fine. But I want to talk specifically about Naomi Wolf, Tulsi Gabbard, and RFK Jr. If Trump was a general manager and he was trading, like we trade baseball cards, he's trading, Mitt Romney, he's trading Liz Cheney, he's trading Bill Kristol or Adam Kinzinger, and he's getting in return, he's taking these dummy Republican establishment dorks and he's sending them to the other team. And in return, he gets Naomi Wolf, Tulsi Gabbard, and RFK Jr. He has fleeced the political world. It's like getting Derek Jeter and Wade Boggs and A-Rod It's like getting them in return for a bag of beans. Okay? That's what happened. And it's not, I don't think, because Naomi or Tulsi or RFK Jr. have changed that much. The goalposts have been moved. The goalposts have been moved. So who do you want to roll with? Ladies and gentlemen, you want to roll with Liz Cheney, which is just Dick Cheney in drag, and you want to roll with Adam Kinzinger and these characters, the Romneys and the McCains and the heroes that were captured and the heroes that weren't captured. You want to roll with them, or do you want to roll with Naomi, Tulsi, Elon, RFK Jr.? Which battleship do you want to be in? And,
well, and even, which party do you want to go to? That's the thing too.
Well, right. So you got a great reset. You got one. And the alliance of all these different types of people is why we won. It's like the Maha MAGA Avengers team. And my PR firm, I like to say, is at the center of the MAGA Maha cinematic universe. Because at this point, I haven't checked yet this morning, but I've got half the cabinet have come from Publius PR. Pete Hegseth, Michael Waltz, you're right, RFK Jr., Vivek, and other administrative jobs. I mean, it's, Peter Navarro is probably going in any minute. So it's an amazing thing. It is a great time to be political, to love the country, to be fighting the twin evil Gemini of globalism and wokeism, because that's what we're up against. And if you think for 1 second that they're just going to go away, no, they're like herpes flaring up. They're going to go dormant, and then they're going to come back. They're like a tapeworm. They're like termites. So they might not use the term woke anymore, but they'll come up with some other term. And then Brian and I, the Irishman in the bar, will be ready for him with our shillelaghs.
Always ready with the shillelaghs. Always
right.
ready with Hey, a little secret. I actually like Bushmills better than Jameson.
Oh, you're such a Protestant. Although I did wear orange today instead of green. So
yes, you are.
Well,
those are great. I mean, look, those are great words to end on. I can't even add to that. That was perfect. So let's do this. I'd like to have you come back, and we should do a panel, I think, sometime, and even get some people on the other side if we can. But everything you say, I couldn't agree with more. And if you've enjoyed this interview, get any of AJ's books, because one thing I kept saying to Naomi, like, I was annoying her. She's got a new addiction, and her new addiction is Fear Thy Neighbor.
Oh no!
Have you heard of the show?
No.
It's one of these ID shows, like one of these cheaply made investigation discovery shows. I got her hooked on it. But it's just like a quick hit of like, well, it is what it is. Fear thy neighbor. New neighbor moves in, they start killing each other. And I kept interrupting her last night because I was just trying to get some notes for the interview, and I kept laughing out loud. And I'm like, I'm so glad I met AJ, because I feel like he's sitting at the kitchen table with me, and we're having a drink, and I can't stop laughing, because it's not only it's funny, but it's funny because it's true, and it's and you have a vast amount of citations in the back. That's the really impressive part. I've seen a lot of these books. We even had a guy we interviewed like back in like 2016. I couldn't stand him, but it was he wrote some book about Trump, and I went to the bookstore one day with my daughter, and I said, check this out. We took pictures of all the Trump books. Trump is evil, Trump is bad, Trump is Satan, Trump. But they all would have like 2 pages of citations. Your whole back of your book is. It's an amazing book. I'm so glad you sent it to us. It's a great read. It will always be on my coffee table, and I got to get The Woking Dead. Do you have anything else for the audience? I've got quickly put up your social media on the bottom. I've got your website. Obviously add an @ symbol for the Twitter accounts. I couldn't get it all in because I have a 200 character limit here on my streamer.
Oh, good.
But it's.
So let me just say this. Whether we're fighting for Western civilization, the middle class, or the nuclear family, understand that we have one culture here. We're not multicultural. We're multi-ethnic. And we're not going to throw out the Magna Carta. We're not going to throw out the scientific method just because we like sushi and go out on Cinco de Mayo. But we can all be a part of the most successful civilization in Earth's history. You come here legally, you can be a part of it. And I think that's for all the talk about good vibes and joy, I think we're feeling it now. I think we should remember this feeling, because we can join together even in the future to push back on the forces that try to divide us. So look, get a copy of the Woking Dead. It just came out in paperback, and then the White Privilege album is hardback. I write the way I talk, but there is, for all the jokes and some of the bombs I throw, there is, a golden thread of not just humor, but harmony within it to try to bring people together through
Absolutely.
jokes, through historical, ideas, and I think people will enjoy it. And if you've got a blue-haired niece or nephew, make this Christmas, a White Privilege album Christmas. Get it for them. Maybe you could convert them, get a little stocking stuffer. Hopefully they won't have a heart attack.
Well, on that note, AJ, it's been a pleasure. I will get all the links up in the description, and I'll probably play a little outro video here. You don't need to stick around for that. You're a busy man. You're taking care of a lot of good people, my wife included. We appreciate it. We appreciate you. And I'm looking forward to talking to you again soon. So everyone, get White Privilege album. You're going to love it. It's great for everyone. It doesn't matter who you are. And with that, AJ, thank you so much for coming on Investigate Everything.
I love you, brother. Love Naomi. You guys keep fighting,
well.
all right? We'll talk soon.
Likewise. Take care. Bye-bye. So we're going to end it there, and I'll do another episode tonight. If you have questions about this interview, please come back tonight. AJ's on a pretty tight schedule, so I couldn't really field a lot of the questions while he was on. I'll take a few of them now. It looks like just a lot of people, but my buddy Not Lowe's, we don't agree on anything, but I really like this guy because he's vocal. He says what he feels. I can't really address everything, but Not Lowe's, you're putting out a lot of stuff here, lots of stuff. Why don't you just put it in a Substack, man, and put it all together, and hell, I'll even feature it if it's well sourced. I mean, I love discussions. I love your discussions, but it's just so much I can't really address it all on an episode. But I will. I meant to show AJ this one, so I'll make sure he sees that. He's a really good dresser. This guy, I got to find his tailor. And then someone said, AJ's ethnicity is joy. That is hilarious. We met in person for the first time at CPAC this past year, and I gotta say, man, I was just so impressed with this guy. His level of knowledge is insane. And he's just always an upbeat, positive guy, and he's always learning something new, always reading everything. No problem, Not Laws. I see you. He says, yeah, it's a wall of text. No, that's totally fine. It's just, I don't know. Make sure you keep those Not Laws, these messages. You can actually drop them in an email to me. It's just sometimes they don't retain on the streaming platform. So I don't want, if you took the time to write them, I certainly want to read them. But if you want to drop them in an email to me or a DM on at Brian O'Shea SPI on Twitter, I'm certainly going to read them and I'll address them. They're important. So there's that. But yeah, great guy, and you can't go wrong. And I flew through this book, and I am not a fast reader, but I flew through this book. It was just so good, and there's so much history in there. And I don't know if you guys caught it, but I was blown away when it turns out the guy that was trying to push Ebonics had it wrong. It's actually originated in England and has nothing to do with Black Americans, except that they were kind of forced, it was forced upon them in the South. It's a really good chapter. I don't want to do it an injustice by messing it up, but that blew my mind. And I didn't get a chance to say it while he was on, but if you go back to Mao, Mao was so much like the Kamala Harris campaign, where they would just shift, and then all of a sudden hitting that drum beat and that repetition and redundancy, and that's what good propaganda is, where they would say, joy, joy, and Joe Biden who? No, this is your ticket now. Forget what just happened just last week. Don't believe your lying eyes. Just, do what we say. And Mao did the same thing. He formed these student protesters, and they started getting out of control, and they turned anti-government. Mao was the government, and so amazingly, Mao said, "You're right, violent protesters. They are your problem." People are like, "What? What? Yes, them. Let's go get them." He's talking about his own government, and people's right, because they get caught up in it. And I think a lot of what people get caught up in is the emotional part. It's very addictive. And it clouds your brain. And that's why it's so important when you start feeling anger, like on Twitter or X, those type of things when you're writing. And I fall victim to this all the time. I'll start pounding out an angry response to someone. I'm like, take a breath. Because you're not thinking, like, do you really want to spend time on this? This person's just poking you with a stick. And I think that's where these neo-Marxists have failed, is they just poke people with that emotional stick too much. And once people get addicted to the emotional things, they're really getting addicted to some dopamine, but a lot of adrenaline, you got to keep feeding them or they'll turn on you. And they created a monster. And I think that's what happened. And, we're all going to feel the effects of that. That we're not certainly not out of the woods, won a great battle, but the war continues. But I really appreciate this audience and this side of history, because everyone's thinking. No one's going to the weigh-in and taking the bait, the way boxers will glare at each other. They're really just trying to get the tempers of the other boxer going so they're not thinking straight. And so that's why I appreciate you guys. And this book really puts it in perspective. You really read it, you're like, damn, that's right, I forgot about, that's right. This guy's an incredible social critic. So get the book. All the stuff's down there at the bottom. I'll put it in the description later on. I did put together a cold open. We'll see how that looks. There's no music or anything like that, but just a bunch of clips that I think kind of talk to what's going on. A lot of what's covered in the book, not exactly, but I did find some clips, and I included some clips from that old movie from the Tom Wolfe novel, Bonfire of the Vanities. And it's amazing how the more things change, the more they stay the same. And watching some of the clips of that movie, and then I kind of interlace them with what's going on now, it's the same freaking scene. It's the same dance every single 4 years. Every 4 years, it's the same thing. And they just keep recycling it. So keep doing what you're doing. I see, by the way, I see Anti-Corrupt, our friend Amber, who's awesome. Amber, you at some point, you just got to we'll just have to get you on the show. You were on Emerald and Naomi the other day too. So she's an incredible investigator. Throw up a few of your comments there. I just want to make sure I covered everyone here that took the time to come here. I couldn't agree with you more. It's try to not think totally, but it's hard to think when you're caught up in it. We've all been there. It's hard to think when you're in an emotional whirlpool. I mean, if you have a spouse or a girlfriend or boyfriend, you ever get into those arguments where it's not going anywhere because you're both so pissed off that it's going in circles. You just got to pull out of it and take a walk. And that's what people need to do. And left and right. I mean, look, I'd rather have debates with, someone like, for instance, kids my daughter's age, because they're actually really pretty analytical. They make some good arguments. I don't agree with them, but they at least bring their receipts. And that's what I like. I think the left and the right need each other. We just don't need Marxism. I think that's what makes this. I certainly don't want a one-party country. That's at least a disaster. But they're thinking too. They're just not being represented. The people you see, that's why you see so many TikTok videos, because those people are addicted to TikTok and their own emotions. So anyways, I'm rolling on and on. I had a ton of coffee. By the way, I had a ton of coffee and I had all these supplements. These are my sponsors. I love this stuff. If I can't get coffee in me at the same time, I'll take some Limitless from 1775. They are my sponsor. That's my personal sponsor. Check out all their products. I love their coffee. But even if you don't drink coffee, you can get the Limitless. This is like a series of different kinds of mushrooms, like chai. I don't even know what half these are. Reishi mushrooms, lion's mane, help you focus, give you energy. Problem is, I took a bunch of these. Then I took my wellness company bison pills. Then I had my 1775 coffee in my Pfizer Papers mug. I just wanted to have some of the energy that AJ has. So if I'm running at the mouth as I am, that's the reason why. Also, if you're not already, please follow me on X. I'm always posting stuff out. I think I did a good job tearing apart that Elon Musk Iran meeting thing that the New York Times put out. I kind of pointed some fingers at the journalist who has a lot of conflicting interests. If you haven't already, please check out my Substack. I'm writing more now, so if you go over there, please do subscribe. You could subscribe for free. However, I do this for a living, so any help you could give me, even with a small subscription, that super, super helps me. Lets me keep doing these investigations, full time. Same thing with my Give, Send, Go. That's how I keep in business right there, is supporters like you. So, if you can, and look, if you can't, budgets are tight. It's Christmas. We're going through a financial hell. What's nice about Give, Send, Go is you can actually send me a prayer. I appreciate anything you can send. That's always super nice. And then don't forget our sponsors for Daily Clout, Birch Gold. I had Philip Patrick on last week. He's awesome. He's their precious metal specialist. If you see at the bottom of the screen right there, just text DailyClout, all one word, to 989898. You're going to get your free info kit. And again, especially if you like history and economics, it's a great write-up. It's worth it. It's free, and they will not spam you. They actually won't spam you. So it's excellent. If you have questions about gold, the gold market, why it's important, it's actually now is a really good time to invest in gold, because gold since last year went up almost $750 to it hit, I think, like $2,800 an ounce right before the election. Dropped that back down a little bit because the dollar picked up. But anyone that invests, if gold comes down, you want to get in it, because it's always going to go back up. History has shown us that. I remember as a kid, it was in the 300s. Now it's like, just under 3,000 an ounce. It's a more than just a safe place to put your money. It's a safe harbor, and to at least add to your portfolio. Our other sponsor, if you see there at the bottom, getnativepath.com/DailyClout. Use promo code DailyClout. You're going to get 45% off. What they have is that I really like. I've shown it before. What Get Native Path has that I'm really into is this stuff right here. Add that to stage. The collagen, I'm 50 now. Okay. And it's like, we all need collagen at any age, but it's so good to things start getting sore and sprained, and you don't know why when you get older. And I started using this because they sent us some samples when we started their sponsorship with us, and it's really good. And what I like too is that I actually do put it in my coffee because it has no taste. You don't even know it's there. A scoop of that a day, and it's literally keeping the doctor away. So Get Native Path. /daily, getnativepath.com/DailyClout. It does actually improve your bones, your mobility. I'm pretty sure my hair is thicker because of this stuff. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's not based on science, based on observations, anecdotal. But, my son made fun of me about 6 months ago saying, "Dad, your hair is getting thin." And I started taking this stuff, and boom, it's like I got the mirror. I'm like, okay, thank God. But it really has helped with a lot of the soreness I used to have just from doing investigations and then sitting down and writing out investigations. So getnativepath.com/DailyClout and get 45% off. And then, of course, make sure you get your Pfizer Papers book. If you go to dailyclout.io /Pfizer Papers, you can find the book there. I've got a stack of them here. I don't want to walk over and get them, so I'll show you the mug. That is the book, actually, and it's getting a lot of attention to the point where some of the attention I can't even tell you guys about because it's secret, but it's all good. And it's 2-3 year project involving 3,000 people going through the actual Pfizer Papers to put together this wonderful book that really lets people know, here's what's going on with this thing. It's something to keep, every household should have. I believe it'll be in colleges and universities sometime in the future. So get your copy today. If you do donate to DailyClout, they will send you, I forgot the amount, but they will actually send you a free signed copy of the Pfizer papers. I think it's still #1 on Amazon as well. It's selling really well, which is important because that covers the cost of the book. We're not making any money on the book. I can tell you that right now. Books are not the place you want to go to make money, but it covers the cost because it's important to get this information out there. Otherwise, people would be trying to go through over 100,000 documents on their own. It's all in 2 volumes now, so that's good. All right, well, that is all I have. Let me just check the comments. I will be back later on, hopefully. Okay, so I see you there, Jenks, Amber. All right, let me see here. Still smoking the bison. You know, I wonder if you can smoke. No, I'm not even going to mess with that. I do love these from the Wellness Company. Another sponsor. Makes sense. I mean, if you ever watch Jaws, you know, Orca always went right for the liver. This is liver, heart, kidney. I take these every morning. If I don't take them, I feel it. It's at the point now. This is like Popeye the Sailor Man for the older people in the crowd. It's nature's multivitamin. It makes a lot of sense, and there's none of that stuff that you can't identify, so that's good. I'm going to try to leave you guys with this video, and would love your comments for later on. I'll announce the time on X when I'll be back, because I've got some things to cover. I'm not sure today if I'm going to be able to cover the Ruth Sent Us protest, but I do want to get into HHS and the RFK appointment, just because over the past 4 years, myself, people like Autumn, several of us have gone deep on HHS now. They've been funding even Unified School District of LA, circumventing Congress. And there's a reason why the deep state, as they call them, is freaking out that RFK is taking over HHS. Of all the appointments anyone could get, HHS, that is a powerhouse. That is a monopoly in our government, and it's got tentacles in every aspect of your life. Don't believe me? Just go check out their org chart. It's shocking if you haven't seen it. So anyways, I'll try to leave you with this outro video. I don't know how good it is. I just threw it together right before the show, so forgive any bad transitions, but we'll see how it looks, and I will let you go. This has been Brian O'Shea with Investigate Everything, having had featured AJ Rice. Get the new book, The White Privilege Album, and I will talk to you all soon. Thanks so much.
Bronx.
Next case.
People versus Harold Williams. Indictment number 294721.
This case was dismissed 3 weeks ago.
Go get him, Tiger.
What is this case doing here?
Your Honor. Let me approach the bench, Your Honor.
Now, who the hell are you?
Kramer, sir. Assistant District Attorney Kramer.
Mr. Kramer, you are new here. Let me explain something to you. This case, Mr. Kramer, is what we call a piece of shit, which loosely translated means you don't have any evidence.
Except that the District Attorney, Mr. Weiss, has instructed me to show you.
I know who the district attorney is, Mr. Kramer. And the only reason Mr. Weiss is interested in this case is because Mr. Williams over there is a white man who lives in a nice big house in Riverdale.
I'm not following you, sir.
Because it's an election year, Mr. Kramer. And because 99% of the people you shovel through this court are black and the other 99% don't even speak English. But they do vote. So your boss, the district attorney, Mr. Weiss, who every night dreams of one day becoming mayor of New York, what he needs is a white man. He needs to find him, he needs to book him, and he needs to throw him in jail. That way everybody likes him. The press likes him, the voters like him. You know, even your mother will like him. You following me, Mr. Kramer?
I'm following you now, sir.
Now you go and tell your boss, Captain Ahab Weiss, that I know he's out there looking for the great white defendant. But Mr. Williams over there is not in.
The Americans have been clear, though. They have a broken immigration system. I don't believe in mass deportation, but I don't believe in mass saturation. 220,000 migrants and asylum seekers came to the city, cost us $6.4 billion. I'm not allowed to let them work. I'm not allowed to have them participate in the tax base of this city. We can't deport those who commit crimes in our city. We are not allowed to connect with ICE. This is a failed system. We need to fix it. And if we don't fix it, we're seeing what's happening in Chicago, what's happening in Houston, what's happening in Denver. This is wrong for cities to pick up this course. They only gave me $200 million out of $6.4 billion that it should have gone to everyday issues in our city.
Other side of
that Transformation Church. Trans is in the title. Transformation. You can be here. Oh. This is by far one of the most blasphemous and ridiculous things I've ever seen in my life. The problem with people like this is that they don't have the courage. They don't have what it takes to get on the world's platform, on the pulpit, preaching to a congregation of I don't know how many he has in his church. It sounds like a lot of people. He doesn't have the courage to stand up there and say God made two genders. So what does he say up there? He said he wishes that God had somewhere in the middle between male and female and maybe an other. Why do you need an other? Because you don't have what it takes to preach the word of God the way it's written, verbatim. You don't have the courage to stand up there and say there are two genders and homosexuality is sin and transgenderism is a mental illness. You don't have the courage to do that. So therefore, you wish that God had made others so you can have an easier time doing what you do. That's not how it works. When you're on the front line preaching the word of God, you will take heat. You will have to accept ridicule. And if you're not strong enough to do that, then you do not need to be taking up this job in this career. You need to either find it within yourself to make some changes, or you need to seek another career. With the way you're talking, you need to be in front of some high school somewhere, giving motivational speeches to kids who are trying to come out, because you're not fit to be in front of a church talking the way you're talking, because you can lead people down the wrong path. And if you know the Bible, I hope you do. You don't act like you do. You will be held accountable for how you lead people astray. So I highly recommend you repent for this.
Selection. Like it's a joke or something.
Crying on the internet, but I'm not even about to pretend like this some shit that I'm finna be embarrassed about, bro. Like, I ain't never been so fucking devastated behind an election. And it's just like, when you a black woman surrounded by black men and they say all this shit like, oh, he's not that bad and oh, he just hates everyone, bro. Like, it was my brother homeboy I was talking to the other day, a black man, and I found out that he's a Trump supporter. I'm like, he does not like you. And he was like, oh no, he just don't like everybody. What? So that's a good candidate for you? Someone who just fucking hates everybody? Like, what? And I'm fucking crying in my room this morning. My brother gonna come up in here and say, what's wrong with you? Like, he can't think of one possible reason why I would be upset right now, bro. These niggas are so fucking, they live on another planet. And it's because none of this shit affects men.
All of it affects men. Taxes, healthcare, the economy. Yeah, it affects everybody. It's not just you.
That's why.
They must for the results of this election. If you look up the data for the election, damn near 80% of us voted for Kamala. Yeah, it is concerning that there are more black men that are, supporting someone like Trump, but we still showed out, The only other demographic who voted for Kamala more is black women. Damn near 92% of black women. Black women really showed the fuck out. But, yeah, you can't pin this election on us. What I think really ultimately, put this election in Trump's favor is, of course, the overwhelming amount of white people voting for him and the upkick in Latino men who voted for him as well. Like, I really think that those demographics is ultimately what gave him this election.
See that, black man? Sir Boy is right. It doesn't matter if we support...
Identity politics.
There we go.
Now it's something that we all know about. But it's kind of difficult in China because we all look alike.
Right.
We're the same people, mostly 95% of us. So how do you divide? By class.
Right.
And then you have a label. It's not like, you belong to this class and you're fine. You're not fine. If you were categorized as part of the black class, you are the enemy of the state, and you were denied opportunities such as going to college, have promotion, good jobs, all this. You have nothing to do with this. You were just second-class citizen. More than that, this become your identity, become part of your DNA, and you pass it down to your children.
Really?
And your children's children. Yes. And if you belong to the Black class, you cannot go to college.
But wasn't
no matter
Xi
how good
Jinping,
you are.
wasn't Xi Jinping the current leader's family Black class?
Okay, so it's complicated. But first, that's how they divide. If you have land, you have a property, you become Black class. But you only have so many people have land and property. They have to expand it. So later, if you have the incorrect thought, they can denounce you and put you in the Black class. That's what happened to Xi Jinping. His father was purged by Mao. That's not it. His whole family were implicated. So they become the Black class. So during the Cultural Revolution, Xi Jinping became a bad, Black class kid. So he was chased by the Red Guard. He was almost beaten and killed by the Red Guard because he was considered the enemy because his father was the enemy of the state.
Chicago has or had about 1,900,000 black residents.
Yes.
You're down to 700,000-ish, 700.
It's going down every day.
Every day. Your mayor, 2 weeks ago, said that Chicago is now open to bring in 700,000 illegal aliens. Do you think that's a coincidence?
Absolutely not. One, they want to keep voting power, and they want to keep progressive politics in play. And in order to do that, they're going to have to build those numbers, keep those numbers up, because they're dwindling every day. People are moving. There used to be the Great Migration where people from the South would move to Chicago. Now we're dealing with the reverse migration. People from Chicago are moving back to the South. They're moving back to places like Atlanta, back to places like Alabama, back to places like Tennessee, because they don't like what's going on in the Midwest, in the city of Chicago specifically, in Milwaukee specifically, in St. Louis specifically. These cities are experiencing reverse migration. People are going back south. And we need to realize that illegal immigrants are putting so much pressure on our system. For instance, Project Hood, our not-for-profit, we're building this 90,000 square foot facility. But every single day, there's not a day that goes by that we don't have people who have come here to America illegally coming to us for help. Now, because I'm a pastor and because we're the church, I don't have the privilege to say, I'm not going to help you.
Correct.
You go back to where you came from. I can't do that. I'm a pastor.
Right.
So what do? We take them in. We try to assist them. We try to do the best we can because we're Christians and because we have to. But that's not something we should be having to bear the burden of doing. But we have to because our government has let us down so much that the resources that we have for this center, the resources that we have to transform and build this community back up, we're having to shift them and use them in other places. And I'll be the first to tell you, it is hurting us. It is putting a strain on us. And I can imagine if I'm feeling that way, and we have a pretty successful non-for-profit, I can only imagine what other businesses, what other non-for-profits in our community are going through, the strain and the burden that they are experiencing as a result of having people who are here illegally needing our help.
Stephen Miller and David Duke, and against your own sisters, and chose Kamala Harris. Y'all voted with Stephen Miller and David Duke, and against your own sisters, and chose Kamala Harris with 60% of their votes. So you own everything that happens to your mixed status families and to your wives, sisters, and abuelas from here on in.
But my question was whether you wanted to see mass deportations. Do you want to see mass deportations?
So the first thing that we need to do is close the border. More than 10 million people illegally entered the country. They have to be deportation. So there is no other way around. They have to be deportation. They have to be
deportation
we
camps.
have to respect the laws.
Do you
I'm
want to
not
see
saying deportation camps.
Do you want to see people
I'm
in
not saying
camps
deportation
rounded
camps.
up and put in
No.
camps?
No.
Isn't that what
Well,
you voted for? Isn't that what you voted for?
Democrats need to be mature, and they need to be honest, and they need to say, yes, there's misogyny, but it's not just misogyny from white men.
Mm-hmm.
It's misogyny from Hispanic men.
Right.
It's misogyny from black men. Things we've all been talking about, who do not want a woman leading them. Might be race issues with Hispanics. They don't want a black woman as president of the United States.
We need to talk about is whether or not, folks just had the wool pulled over their eyes. And maybe they were voting on economic issues, but at the end of the day, maybe voting against their own self-interest.
A lot of Hispanic voters have problems with black candidates.
Right.
A lot
and
of
with other Hispanics. You got some that
exactly.
don't like each other.
We talk a lot about these different demographics and these assumptions of where they're going to go. Latinos in Texas, a district that's 97% Latino, went 75 percentage points for Donald Trump. Why?
Misogyny.
It's on the, no,
That's
it's on
why.
the border.
It's
the border
misogyny.
crisis is on their doorstep.
So-
and they were begging people to care about it for years. We
Misogyny
need to
and
take some
sexism.
lessons.
That's what that was.
The number of Latinos and Latinas that voted for Donald Trump despite his racist rhetoric, it kind of makes me want to pull my hair out a little bit here, Paula, because not only is it voting against your best self-interest here.
Very well. In the case of the People versus Sherman McCoy, based on the evidence contained in this recording, I'm ordering the indictment dismissed in the interest of justice.
Justice! Justice! You call that justice? That's not justice, you racist pig!
Racist? You dare call me racist? Well, I say unto you, what does it matter the color of a man's skin if witnesses perjure themselves? If a prosecutor enlists the perjurers? When a district attorney throws a man to the mob for political gain, and men of the cloth, men of God, take the prime cuts. Is that justice? I don't hear you. I'll tell you what justice is. Justice is the law. And the law is man's feeble attempt to set down the principles of decency. Decency. And decency is not a deal. It isn't an angle or a contract or a hustle. Decency Decency is what your grandmother taught you. It's in your bones. Now you go home. Go home and be decent people. Be decent. Mr.
Mr. McCoy, you're free to go.